Hello and welcome back. Today we are going to be starting a Panama run, a trade-only Panama run. This was voted on quite some time ago from the Patreon, but this will really be very nice in Charters of Commerce. Initially we planned on just taking no territory, but I think we're going to try and declare very, very few, if any, wars, and instead lean on kind of the two mechanics that have really kind of appeared or really been developed a lot in Charters of Commerce, which is that we are going to focus on making a bunch of treaties in order to gather and develop our power, and then kind of the main basis of our power is going to be trade. We can now scale up trade enormously, considering we can add an infinite amount of ports, or there's not a port cap, and so we are going to look to create a trade empire functionally from nothing. You can see we've already unpaused the game and gone a little bit. That is so that our GDP and population appear. Here at Game Start, we have 50,000 for our GDP, 125k pops. This is functionally starting with nothing, where we have started as New Granada and gone for the release subject interaction in order to make it so that we're Panama. Basically, our only advantage is not really one that's very consequential, or it's consequential, but it's available to everyone, which is that we will eventually have the Panama Canal Company, which has been updated a little bit in that it will, one, be way easier to gather prosperity, so these canal companies are going to be insane. They're going to give 50k tax income. Trade advantage is going to be important for us getting the best price possible on all of our trades. We're going to look to take the Suez Canal at some point as well in this run, but more importantly, +1 max number of companies. So functionally, this is slot free as a company, and so we are going to look to develop into it, and also we are going to have both trade centers and ports as industries that are available for this company, and so these will be functioning a lot better as well, and these are companies or industries that we in particular want to lean into. So for our strategy, decrees are going to be incredibly powerful for us because they will apply to 100% of our country. In particular, we will likely promote social mobility in the entire time because the extra education access is going to mean that we are going to have really high literacy, but also manufacturing industries throughput, service industries throughput. I think that this is probably staying in the entire time, especially if manufacturing industries applies to ports. I don't think it does. I think it will apply to the shipbuilding yards though, and services are going to be something that is very valuable in our country. We're going to have a lot of ownership pops. We're going to have a lot of demand for services. So I do think this is going to be a solid industry. The mass migration attraction is curbed by the fact that we only have one state. There's a malus that applies. It's not really displayed anywhere in the UI, but as long as you have under 5 states, you are going to have the malus. And then we do have this for state construction efficiency and infrastructure, +1 infrastructure per 100k pop. So it's +1 infrastructure. But this is going to be nice early on. I think that eventually we will primarily be constructing overseas in places where we have investment rights, so it's maybe not going to be that good in a long-term type of sense. Now, for our diplomacy, we're just going to be increasing relations with kind of the big players for the most part and investing our resource in this way. So with laws, to kick things off, we are going to go for dedicated police force. It's fairly straightforward, easy for us to pass, and it is one of the few that we can pass with kind of our initial sort of setup. Incidentally, we are also going to be running low taxes because most of our money will come from our deals, and so in this way we can get above contested government. We also do have different types of things going on for our economic system laws. I think that interventionism can possibly in some circumstances now be better than laissez-faire. Big part of this forbids monopolies. It's going to be kind of contingent on how good monopolies are, how good enforcing monopolies overseas are. We get company charters instead of actual companies, which is also a nerf to laissez-faire, and so this is going to take a little bit of experimentation to decide what's best, but also trade policy is an interesting one as well, because I think it's going to be now between protectionism and free trade. The big idea of protectionism allows you to do tariffs for import, and since you have a resource in your trade capacity that is getting utilized, I think that some trades you don't really like, and in order to prevent these, you can tariff, and this makes it so that tariffs are actually decent, not because you are trying to extract money via tariffs, but because you are trying to make it so that your trade capacity goes towards certain things, which we will see as we kind of operate throughout this game. And free trade does not allow this, but you can see it does give trade advantage. However, if we're getting a decent amount of trade advantage from other sources, maybe this isn't all that valuable. You can recall that we do get from the Panama Canal Company, which we're going to be building, 25% trade advantage as well. So we probably will stay on protectionism, which is going to be a little bit of a different sort of nuance than we're used to. Also, regarding technology, we're doing something that we haven't done before, I think ever, which is we're going to research hydraulic cranes first. I'm not 100% sure this is good, but this is leaning into our trade idea, which is that we are going to get more quantity traded in our trade centers off of this. And we don't really need to go for atmospheric engine because we aren't going to have a lot of mineral mining in our country anyways. We don't need to go for railways because ports are going to increase. There's no cap on ports anymore, and that can increase infrastructure. And I think we're going to start building overseas relatively early. And then finally, we don't really need the relatively ubiquitous stock exchange technology. The main idea behind this is that it gives 10% MAPI because we only have one state. And when you only have one state in your country, your market price is that state price. And so it's not going to make a difference. And because now trade influences local prices, any trades that we do that influence market price will also influence the prices locally, which means that functionally we are going to have 100% MAPI until we acquire a treaty port or any other type of state or location than what it is we start with. So we place an interest in Russia because Russia has a power block, and we are going to see with a lot of these treaties, especially at the start, that they are going to get rebalanced a whole ton. They've already been rebalanced over the course of time in which we've had access and been significantly nerfed. But some of you who were around when they first allowed reverse sways may recall being able to get the EIC for free because the AI was not very good at evaluating this. I think the AI is probably going to have a lot of weak kind of exploitable points, and we are going to try and exploit those as much as we can here with Panama so that we can get things started. For example, we put an interest in Russia so that we can offer to host a power block embassy of theirs in exchange for $1,500 a week. If we take a look at our current income, we are getting $800 a week in terms of our current income. We have no expenses because we have no government buildings, and so we're going to send this on over. Because we have a plus 10 here, we have a 50% chance of getting an acceptance, but we may look to save scum this a little bit where we send it on different days in order to make sure that this goes through. That way we can push things along. I think we will just probably save scum stuff that's 50% chance so that we can squeeze a little bit more value, and then anything that's under that, we won't look to do that. We could also just send another request later, so it's not a big deal. I think we'll maybe just send requests later. Our proposal gets declined, so we will look to somewhere down the road pester Russia again for some money. Now, we are going to improve relations with Russia, I think, instead of the USA, because I think this will be a little bit better. And so, because if Russia is happy with us, I do believe we will have an easier time getting this. But if we take a look here, I don't think that they are protective of us. So Great Britain is a little bit less on board with giving us free money. And so we'll see if we can get better relations with them first. Actually, 25% chance. Let's just send it out and see what we can do. And they do agree to it, the York Agreement. For 5 years, they will give us 1,000 ducats. That's kind of buckets of ducats, at least for us, in exchange for us giving them a power block embassy, which is kind of free for us. And now our income has increased by 125%. So if we look at the market areas map mode, we can see that we are whited out, and that is because we do not have access to the world market. We will gain access once we finish this port, but we still won't be able to do any trade. The reason being is we need to build trade centers ourselves. But I think that what we're going to do is we're going to build our first construction sector first. That way we can get a little bit more construction. This will probably lose more money than we could hope to kind of keep up, unless we can get some free money from Russia like we did for the Great Britain. But then we will work on our trade center, and we can start our first few trades, which will largely be around just kind of fixing shortages, the shortages that get created by us building a construction sector and probably going iron frame building. We also pick up dedicated police force, which is nice. So with our construction sector, we are faced with some challenges because we have need/shortage of all of these input goods that we have available. But unlike before, we can't just put in a bunch of trades in order to solve that. Instead, we must rely on our trade centers to buy those things. They're going to seek the most profitable trades, and generally speaking, if something's plus 75 price, it's going to be among the most profitable trades. But you see, we have a lot of these things, and so what we're going to do is we're going to try and solve for our construction sector specifically, because we really don't want this running a throughput malice. So we are going to want to develop a few more trade centers, and also we can get a couple of these goods produced locally. So we're going to try and produce a little bit of softwood. We've added to the queue a logging camp. We can also produce a little bit of tools, and we do have manufacturing decree down, so we're going to get decent throughput on those. But the other two things we will have to solve through imports, and so what we will do is we will also add a couple more trade centers to the queue here, with the idea being that they will try and import these things. Now, if they start importing or exporting other things, what we can do is we can tariff in order to prevent those imports or exports and massage our trade centers into doing kind of more of the things that we want or solving the particular shortages we want. But it would be very hard indeed to force them to do something like import coffee because it's at minus 75% price, and even if we created a massive subvention for import, it still might not be the most profitable route, and so they still might not import it. But with what we're doing now, it should be easy to massage them into buying the thing we are running a shortage of. So after a little bit of a cooldown where they won't really accept any sort of agreement that is not significantly better than the one that they refused, we now have the ability to go for a 50% chance on Russia again to get 1,500. This is going to allow us to pay for this construction sector, and we can see we have gotten the Kiev declaration giving us 1,500 ducats a week, which is now, taking a look at our income, basically our entire source of money. What is this? 5/6 of our income is coming from diplomatic pacts that are a result of these agreements, allowing power block embassies in. So we get an invitation from Great Britain to join the power block. I think in theory, the thing to do is probably to join their power block and become a subject of them and just use Great Britain to slap around everyone. But we're going to be a strong, independent Panama that don't need no mummy, and we're going to say no, which incidentally is going to really kick our relations in the teeth. But fortunately, we have taken positive relations from the power block embassy, from the money transfer, and from improved relations, which is going to help out quite a bit. We pass elected bureaucrats, which is going to give us minus institution costs. Our institutions are practically free, though. We should just increase this. They are just going to be a base price for quite some time because they are applying to such a small segment of the population. We can really look to kind of apply them in very, very aggressively. Now, we do want to develop a capitalist class, and so I think in theory, we get more reinvestment if we just take government dividends now in terms of how the math works. But maybe we look to put our buildings up for privatization. That way the industrialists can come up and we can utilize them to pass some laws that we're interested in. So what we're going to do is on these logging camps specifically, we are going to come in here and we are going to allow them to be privatized. We could allow them to be monopolized, which would just allow them to be, or it would exclusively give rights to companies, I believe, or this is giving it to ourselves. But either way, we're just going to privatize these for now, and so they are up for sale. We don't have a really large investment pool, so it'll be some time before they get purchased. It'll cost $50K for the purchase of them from our capitalists, but we hope that a capitalist picks these up, and in doing so, allows us to start pushing up the industrialists so that hopefully they have a little bit more than 0.6% clout. Alright, so pops are just generally going to be a problem for us, and we see Felipe Saliveri, who incidentally maybe should be called Filippo Slavery, because he's a fan of slavery, and I think that we might look to use slaves as part of our larger strategy, at least at the opener here, because we don't have a lot of pops, and we can get them, invite them over, eventually free them, something like this. But we'll say that eventually he'll be Panamanian, and in our open arms kind of way, we'll look to, fold our arms and say, you have to be slaves now, and use this guy to try and get to the point where we can pass just regular slavery, slave trade. Not many people oppose it, because we're on legacy slavery, but this guy will be happy to do this, and I think that he might make for us a bit of a political movement in order to create slaves. No, I guess not. Well, we could promote him to government or look to grant him leadership if we get the armed forces in. And incidentally, thinking of clout and this type of thing, you'll notice our armed forces have basically no clout. The second we build an army, we'll trigger the Age of Caudillos, or the second we recruit a general, but we'll also push these guys into no longer being marginalized, at which point we could promote this guy and use him to pass slavery. Something to consider and something we might be doing. Just kidding. He's going to go to greener pastures. So instead of the old event, a modern conservative on corn laws, which triggered at the very start of the game because we didn't have any grain production, so the price was a little bit high, we have the anti-corn laws league, which is still going to give the inspiration for our age kind of thing that we can click, but either way, we will get this agitator spawning. He comes either way, that is Felix Soto, we'll say an inspiration for our age, and he will trigger a movement that we are quite happy to bolster. So we will come up here, and he will create this liberal movement, which we'll look to bolster, and maybe we let him kick around a bit to kind of promote the movement, but eventually what we can do is we can look to grant him leadership and use him to try and pass specifically protectionism. I think that we'll also go on to laissez-faire, but we are not going to be going on to free trade, which incidentally I think is actually how you close the journal entry for this. We do have to enact free trade to get off of this, but is it really that bad? We get a bunch of events that cause us to increase wages, or pick between that and something else, and so maybe we'll stick on corn laws for a little bit of a time, but we are going to be having, instead of, the kind of usual landowner guy, we get this, petite bourgeoisie guy, which is significantly worse, and for really backward countries, you're not going to have that strong a PB, and so it's going to be a lot harder to reform in terms of using corn laws. So our port finishes that we were constructing, this is giving us a merchant marine, which incidentally, now we are going to kind of start getting things smoothed out a little bit in our trade center. We are importing several things. We did decide to pick up a livestock ranch in order to produce some fabric, so we're fixing that. And we also are going to be producing this tooling workshop coming up next in the queue. And so once that finishes, we are hoping that we are entirely on importing iron, but we're really not generating very much revenue through these, which is a bit unfortunate. Even though we have virtually no expenses, our revenue here is negative, and I'm not entirely sure why it's negative. Okay, it just needed to think a little bit, and now we are generating a positive weekly balance. It must have been kind of some of the hiccups from employment kind of moving up and down, but what we will do is once we get some stuff finished up, in the queue, in the tooling workshop, we're going to look to tariff stuff that's not iron, and by increasing our overall import portfolio of iron, we will actually get a better price for iron. We have a lack of interest, but also we are not one of the bigger players as it relates to the import of iron, and if we were, we would get a better trade advantage, and this would allow us to get a better price and import iron for less than the market price. Currently, the world market price, we are having to import at over the world market price. If we take a look at import advantage, the person who's doing best on the imports is going to be Great Britain. It looks like no one's above 0, and we are currently having to pay the absolute most for iron, getting a price that is above the world market price. And so if we hover the actual price here, I think we will be able to... Oh, looks like it's... import price is going to be 770, and then the world market price, I think, was 50-something. If we take a look, we can take a bit of a look at it. It is 56. So we're having to import it at 70 price, which is quite a bit more expensive. And so getting some more trade advantage would help us out with that. So we see here for ourselves the first example of us kind of importing something that's not related to construction. What we've done is we've put low tariffs on both the import and the export, because our auto queue has picked up tobacco and we'll start exporting it perhaps once this finishes, and instead we're looking to get this deleted from the actual kind of trade menu here. We can see it's not even profitable, but it's really not profitable, or it's not profitable because we put that tariff in and now it gets removed. So this trade center is always trying to find the most profitable profitable trades available. And so if you make them unprofitable, through tariffs, then they will kind of stop trading the thing. Now, to be fair, we will be making less money in the trade center, yes, but we are making construction cheaper if we are going to be importing more of it. Incidentally, we're super not used to trying to go from mercantilism to protectionism as a heuristic. The guy, I think, doesn't even help, the market liberal guy. Instead, the rural folk are more than happy for us to pass this, and the big idea here is that we can import quite a lot better because we will lose a trade disadvantage, which is one of the reasons why our iron price, in terms of what we are able to import it for, is driven really high, and we have no other way of getting iron other than imports. And so I think that we really, really don't like having this negative trade advantage that we are getting from mercantilism, because it's making the iron expensive. We are going to try and start ripping off the Ottomans as well, offering them a power block embassy in exchange for, a little bit of free ducats. The USA has also already made a power block, and so we're going to try and rip them off as well. I think that we're going to wait until we get plus 20 relations, because I think right now they don't care about pulling us into their block, and so we're going to wait until we get up onto that. So before finishing hydraulic cranes, which we do want, we have a swap to stock exchange. Stock exchange is necessary for passing protectionism, so this is something we're interested in. But also, when paddle steamer eventually starts not spreading to us, which I think it will after this week, when this finishes, this will decrease the cost of hydraulic cranes to 10k, and so when that happens, we will be just on the cusp of getting it, and so that's why we only look to research to just around 10k, and looking to benefit a little bit from that. This will enable the bulk trading PM for the trade center, which will allow us to trade at a higher quantity, allowing us to move more goods. So we are kind of at a rough inflection point. We have run out of laborers. We have only 3k peasants available, and so now is kind of the end of our internal expansion. We are going to be picking up a university kind of as our next little thing, but the reason why we are doing this isn't because we're trying to increase research, although we are, but we're trying to increase the power of the Intelligentsia so they demarginalize, so we can use them, politically speaking. But what we have done is we have moved our interest from Anatolia. We were trying to get the Ottomans on board with giving us free money, and instead we've moved it. The idea is that we are going to want to draft a treaty with the Congo wherein we can not ask them for guarantee independence, but where we can ask them for investment rights. Now, we have seen in the past that guaranteeing the independence of some of these guys will make them on board, but we don't really see this as them as being that on board here. But what we can do is we can take from the rich and give to the poor and look to gain some investment rights in this way. I think that what we'll do is we'll offer them maybe 500 a week, and maybe that'll move the needle. And when it won't move the needle very much. Well, in our testing, we were able to get a little bit of investment rights in South Africa on Zulu and Gaza just by offering them protection. And so we will offer them protection here and hope that we can get investment rights. That way we can actually make use of our construction, because functionally it's kind of useless to us at this point because we really don't have the population with which to use it. And here we go. We can offer to Gaza investment rights for a 25% chance of acceptance, and we will just offer to protect them. They've declined. We'll offer the same sort of treaty here to Zulu, and we will just continue to offer this as often as we can until one of them eventually accepts, and we can start building in their nation. We do enter in a treaty with Zulu, so now we can build in their nation, and so what we will do is we will look to build at the top of the queue here something that is maybe going to be a little bit useful for us, de-peasant for them, do this type of thing. We are going to add a little bit of chop, but we see that they have no port, so they're not connected to the world market, so we'll add in a port that we will purchase for them, and maybe a trade center, and we look to push trade out from Zulu, and in theory, we could even try and build stuff that we are interested in importing, and have Zulu try and export more of it in order to bring some more home. There's going to be a lot of massaging of this type, I think, throughout this run, and it is a little bit of an interesting thing. But right now, they're not connected to the world market. Let's get them nice and connected. So we see another little trade that we want to bop, and that is the export of coffee. This is driving up the price of coffee, which is making, our coffee production more profitable, or profitable enough to employ up a little bit, but we actually would rather rake back these workers and have them employed elsewhere because we have more than enough employment. So what we're going to do is we are going to come in and we are going to tariff both the import or export of coffee. We don't want our trade capacity to be dedicated towards coffee. So hurting both the import and the export of it is something that we are super happy to do. This should make revenue go down. And even with the revenue going down, it's still generating a decent amount of profit. Well, this will generate, at least for us, a little bit more money in our pockets, but we aren't really getting that much from tariffs. So we really should have picked a bigger kind of number. We'll maybe come back and pick a bigger number, but the main idea is we're still running a shortage of iron in here, and we do want to get that resolved, and so that's going to be helpful for us. But it looks like we are seeing employment uptick here, so maybe the coffee is making less money, it's firing off some pops, and by doing that, we're getting a smaller supply. Maybe this trade center goes, or maybe this trade export goes away, and some of the people working in the coffee plantation come on over here to the trade center. So here, I did want to note, we are using the GDP ownership display mod, which shows what percentage of our GDP we own and what percentage of overseas GDP relative to our own GDP we own. We are about to finish our first overseas building in Zululand, and so we should see an uptick here once that gets employed, and it should be a relatively large uptick because we have a really small economy, just this 200k. So as this in Zululand gets employed up, this port that is now producing, isn't it produce merchant marine? What's this about, boy? Okay, the PM is now kicked in, so it's producing a non-zero amount of GDP, and so this should tick up, although I guess maybe it's perhaps too small, but the idea is we are going to be watching our GDP ownership because a lot of our ownership is going to be overseas because we don't have enough population to employ, and so we are going to have to make use of buying stuff overseas. So we will see a trade center for Zululand, and we will see their first trade, which is going to be an export of tea. So this is pushing more tea onto the market, and they are importing it to the world market, but this would make, for example, it cheaper for us to import tea. And so if we could get a bunch of trade advantage, in various places, we can kind of massage our own supply of things by building it overseas when we have access to overseas buildings. So I think we're also going to maybe add a little bit more cotton, for example, because fabric is something that we're currently importing, so we could maybe drive down the world market price of fabric. We don't have anyone to really build the things that we have queued up in our own country, but we can look to try and force Zululand to export some more cotton, or we could also just kind of try and take a look and whatever's most profitable in Zululand, look to build that, because we are going to have ownership of these buildings that we are producing here, which is going to mean, obviously, we care about what their weekly balance is going to be. So I think that this is a bit of a reveal in terms of an inflection point where this is where the run's going to go. We are going to start owning way, way, way more ownership overseas. But right now, with the new patch Charters of Commerce, we have way more granularity in terms of how we can control our overseas investments, because we can drive both the availability of a good, in this case fabric, and also the fact that they will be trading it. We can push up the trades in other nations by building trade centers in those nations, which is like significant because this, for example, by pushing down the world market price of fabric, we can make the margin between our own local price of fabric, which is incidentally the same as our market price. We can increase the margin by pushing down the world market price and make it more likely for us to import this without needing to put a subvention in, which would allow us to raise OSLOL, which would increase, our population growth and migration. But this isn't really going to be the big source. The big source is going to be 1% of our population currently is upper strata. We are going to really be shifting almost all of our pops, or a large portion of our pops, over to ownership class. And as this happens, this will really drive up SOL, which should help us to drive up migration as well. I was recording with my stream overlay. I apologize for that. But taking a closer look here in Panama, we can see that we are already, in terms of our investment pool is already purchasing up some of these overseas buildings. We can see that we are purchased up a vineyard, we've purchased up a couple banana plantations, and this is one of the reasons why, even though we're getting more from government dividends than we ought to be, and national ownership is good because of... did they fix the bug? Did they fix the reinvestment thing? They might have fixed it. Huh. The multiplier was overly applying on government-owned stuff on interventionism, so ownership of buildings was especially good, or maybe it's just that our buildings are not fully employed and that's why doesn't look that good. But we are going to look to push ownership specifically so that we can get more reinvestment, and we are going to push it incidentally once we pass laissez-faire, which is going to put everything up for sale. When everything goes up for sale, our guys are going to buy a bunch of buildings. They're going to get a bunch more of access to investment pool and reinvestment, and this reinvestment is going to allow them to buy available buildings whenever we have overseas building capacity. So we have moved our interest back over here with the idea that we do want to try and draft a treaty here with Gaza. We are going to continue to offer guarantee independence because this makes it like super free for investment rights, and we will see that we will have a 25% chance, and we will just keep re-rolling this as we can, as often as we can, and we will shuffle around our interest and look to do this with a bunch of other countries. It seems that if they are if they are unrecognized, they're more likely to accept this, and so we will do that. We probably won't do this over here because Dutch East Indies likes to really clean house over here, so we don't actually want to have to fight someone and get called in because we have zero military. So we're going to go round 2 and try and invite Felipe slavery. That way we can reinstitute slavery. I think that we will maybe make a navy and recruit up a admiral that is of the armed forces if we can. Taking a look, we don't see one available, and we do have the initial roll of guys. I don't think we want any of these guys, so what we'll do is we will create an army as well. We don't have to put anything in the army, we're just taking a look at what commanders are available. And this isn't exactly what we want. I think we might just look to peek behind the door on one of these and recruit one of these. So I think that the landowner is probably going to be more annoying for us than the other guy, so we're going to peek behind one of these guys and see what we can get. So we'll recruit this guy and see, it's another Catholic Church guy. We'll recruit this guy, and that is going to cost us quite a bit of bureaucracy. We'll look to fire these guys over the course of time, but yeah, that is a bit unfortunate. It does decrease hurt our ability to generate taxes, but we're not really making money through taxes. We're making like $340 through taxes. It's all government dividends and diplopacts at this point, so we're in fine shape, and it's really not too big a deal for us to run negative bureaucracy, but we still will take it a little bit low and slow and not look to recruit too many of these guys trying to reveal armed forces guy. We want an armed forces guy, just kind of any armed forces guy, just so we can push their clout up to the point where they're not marginalized, although we could start building an army and that would do the same thing. It's just that we have such few pops that investing anything in army is like a significant drain on the economy, so we prefer not to do it. So we kind of catch this point in motion where we are about to finish Paddle Steamer. In fact, we'll just finish Paddle Steamer up to demonstrate this, where the price of hydraulic cranes is going to decrease by 2.5k when we finish this, because this is the tech that is the last tier 1 tech that's leading into it, and for every tier 1 tech it is going to increase the price by 2.5k, and so you can see here that this is going to make this cheaper. So now we will look to complete this. We'll do the same thing coming for corporate charters. You can see this is 12.5k, and we'll make sure not to research over 10k until mass communications natural spreads to us, but it looks like it'll natural spread before all that is over. But what we have coming up on the horizon is an increase from the production method we are currently using. Small scale trading, that's kind of the baseline one. We get regular trading, which has no kind of deviation from the baseline. Bulk trading is going to allow us to trade 50% more quantity, which is going to help us out. Currently, a lot of things are being solved or attempted to being solved through imports. We don't have any iron available, but I think that we've actually reached the point where we are getting enough iron to get rid of this shortage. It's just going to take a little bit of time for this shortage to go away, but I do think that we have enough iron coming in now, so that's going to be nice for us and for the loud car outside. We are actually just short of getting rid of the shortage, where we would need to import 2 more units, but it will reduce the effects of the shortage, the better a ratio we have. Alright, so we were not getting the amount of construction we should have been from a bug that makes it so that our shortage effect of the minus 75% was persistent, but we just saved and reloaded. We were stuck at 11.25 construction, so now we're up to 15, and also very nice on the construction sectors, specifically for us here in this run that we are doing, is now they only take 1k of employment. So I think that we can add another one considering our investment pool growth rate and the fact that we are currently making so much money. I think we can add one. I think we can maybe add two and go up to 25 construction and look to push things overseas. Also, we passed the threshold where we own over 100% of our current GDP in overseas GDP ownership, which is going to be nice. But in terms of how other people look at you for a lot of these agreements and stuff, they care about your GDP and they care about your military power, and we don't have either. So being able to really abuse people with various treaties might be a little bit difficult for us because they really don't value us all that highly. If we come in here and we take a look at why, we can see that nope, this doesn't have to do with our own power, but for a lot of these, it does have to do with either your military power or your economy size, and we are not very good at both. So we'll take a little bit of maneuvering without tools that we would normally have access to, since we're playing Panama with 150k pops. So we decided to pass free trade instead of protectionism. The real reason is we kind of wanted this trade advantage. This might be a mistake because it's going to make it, I think, a little bit harder to prevent stuff from being imported to us. And so let's take a look at our trade center and see just if that was a mistake. So we currently just, like, we prefer that iron's getting traded, but we don't really have that great a trade advantage. But what we are hoping is that the change in trade advantage helps us to import a bit more iron. And we aren't seeing anything that we were tariffing getting put in on imports or exports, so that's pretty nice. And so maybe that's going to be helpful on that front. We also do get the end of the corn laws, but if we want to try and increase this, what we need to do is we need to move our interest. Currently, we don't have an interest where there is the world's biggest exporter. So if we put an interest in here, this would help us quite a lot for developing trade advantage. And so that is one of the reasons why we are not doing all that well in terms of our ability to import the iron. And also, incidentally, we do see someone kind of crop up that has a really big trade advantage or in terms of import, and that is going to be in the Persian Empire. I wonder where they're getting all their trade advantage from. That math doesn't quite look like it maths. That seems like minus 78% relative advantage. I wonder if that's an overflow bug. Perhaps the metagame around whether or not you should go free trade, to some extent, is affected by how many interests you can put down. We put down our interest in the Rhine so that we would have an interest where the biggest player for the export of iron is. Here we have Belgium, they're exporting 142, and this moved our trade advantage from being negative 60-something to negative 40-something, allowing us to have a better price that we are paying, which in turn is going to make our trade center try and pick up more of these stuff. You can see the import price is 64 rather than 70, and so we should in theory have higher import quantities as this happens. And so a little bit of an interesting thing, but also if we spam a whole bunch of iron in Benin, for example, where we have acquired investment rights and then we have an interest there and a lot of other people don't have an interest there, we can shape trade advantage in our favor a little bit. But as it stands, we don't have a lot of interest, so it's hard for us to cover everywhere in terms of declaring interests everywhere to maximize our trade advantage. And there's really not a very good way for us to acquire that because we would have to build an enormous amount of navy, which we can't really afford. And we did rake back the construction sector from 3 to 2 because here's the crux of our issue is we do not have enough iron to cover all this. We're actually, now we have just barely enough. No, we have not enough iron, but we're right on the cusp of this, so we shouldn't run too heavy a malice. But we are going to continue to invest overseas because we have 0 peasants, and so nothing will really do anything for us in that front. We are going to get a company soon, or access to a company slot, and then I think what we're going to be going for is water tube boiler, because labor-saving PMs are going to be extremely good for us because we have 0 labor. Not that it can cover that much territories, but PMs in general aren't going to be too useful for us. I suppose we could go for more of this type of stuff, more of society stuff. Maybe that's better than pushing these things. Actually, it almost certainly is. So maybe we go something like pharmaceuticals, and we look to get a little bit of extra pop growth through there. Yeah, I think that we're mostly going to be kicking around in the society tab, because most of our owned economy, or the economy that we own in terms of our ownership, is actually just going to be overseas. And so the PMs that we have aren't going to be particularly relevant, like at all. I suppose steam donkeys may be something we're interested in. Same with like electrical and like railways and like, the ability to develop infrastructure. So we have some stuff in here that we maybe care about. But we also don't care about the military because we're not trying to fight anyone. And so maybe we actually just spend all of our research just in the society tab, which is a very strange position to be in. It's somewhat interesting to watch these absolutely massive swings in debt we are getting, because we will lose like 9k at a time over and over and over, get to like 50% debt, and then one building will get purchased. And it's just such a large percentage, since our GDP is so low, it's such a large percentage of our overall line of credit. You can see it's only 450k. So when it accumulates 10k, it's going to accumulate up to like a third here, and then it's going to... yeah, we'll do that one. Then it's going to just blip all the way back into the positive as a 100k building or what have you is purchased. Now, we do have perhaps a very, very rough challenge in that in order to make a company, we need to have a level 5 building. We want to make this tooling company. I do believe that once the company is made, if the thing isn't employed, it will downsize, and if it's not at least level 5, it might deslot the company. I'm not 100% sure like this. I think it's worked like this in the past, but if that is the case, it's basically going to be impossible for us to keep this fully employed with the level of population we have. We need more pop. We will probably have to subsidize and then just export tools in order to make that happen, but the main idea is we want to be able to build tools overseas in all these places where we are getting agreements. We are just offering up protection that we have no intention of honoring in exchange for the ability to build in these guys, domains, just a little bit of this and a little bit of that, and then a 50% chance that they accept, and then we can build and own stuff overseas. In terms of an update on our ownership, we own an additional 250%, so we are approaching 1 million GDP worth of GDP owned, even though we ourselves only have 200k here in Panama. So we had been avoiding for some time building stuff in Panama because we didn't have enough infrastructure there. And with this push for tools, we are crushing our own infrastructure, which is quite painful, and this is denying us world market access. So all of this is very uncomfortable. We wish we had more places to build in, and we would if we were taking territory, but what we're going to do is we're going to subsidize these ports and hope this doesn't make everything really sad. I imagine it will make everything really sad and we won't be able to do this, but the idea is we're trying to recover some infrastructure here to make it so that our trade center can actually be profitable and actually move a decent amount of goods instead of having 57% access and just having horrible prices. And so we are hoping to kind of pull some of this back. Also, no idea why we're importing tools. That's, to me, seems absolutely insane, but the price is kind of okay. We would much rather import a ton of iron, though, and with that iron, actually have our tooling workshops not be running a shortage. So things are a little bit uncomfortable in terms of everything that's going on, and maybe we just have to constant perma-subsidize these ports. We get another invitation for us to join the British Empire. I think we will say no, but this would help quite a lot. Let's take a look at what power blocks they have, but one of the things is market unification is so tempting. Oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. That would be a good one for us. Foreign investments is not, though. We really don't want them to be able to buy in our territory, this type of thing. But market unification, by everyone being in the same customs union, this would allow migration. Our kind of biggest problem is really pop. Otherwise, we would employ up the tooling workshop and we would employ up the ports and nothing would be a problem. But I think that we want the challenge, we want the little extra added difficulty of not playing it like this. And so I think we're going to not join their power block, and we will just cry a little, and by a little I mean a lot, as we try and figure out a way. We need to, at some point, get to a big enough power to make our own power block, and with that, once we build a base, because this will brick our agreements where we're generating money for free. But once we make our own market, then we will be able to siphon off pops via migration. And so we're in an uncomfortable growing period, let's say, where we're trying to get like our company online, but we don't have any infrastructure. We probably should not have done it this way. Let's see how much money we're losing in the ports. It's probably 320 is not too bad. This isn't too bad on the balance, and the infrastructure is going to fix things. So yeah, maybe this is okay. Maybe this isn't as painful as it feels. It certainly feels very painful. I wish we could tariff some of these things so we wouldn't be trading for them. So it looks like Prussia wants to give us trade privileges, and also we can establish the power block embassy, send to them for some money, so we will get going on that. We are starting to run into some money problems, but the Treaty of the Colon is now in place, and so we will be getting a little bit of money from Prussia, but also we will be able to do trade a little bit better with Prussia. Once we get that, we'll go public health insurance. We've been trying to get an agreement with the USA that looks reasonably good for us. I don't think that we could give this up. It seems that when we ask for money in particular, they are generally not that interested in offering us up or in caring about our trade privileges, but they do care about the power block embassy, and they incidentally care a little bit about investment rights. We don't want to give it to them because we don't want to let them buy our buildings, but right now they have the 1K malice because there was a recent treaty going through, but we've been trying to harass them to give us that. Generally speaking, these guys who have power blocks are willing to give us something in exchange for, you know, the power block thing, which I don't even think is that off on the realism aspect. I think that if we were playing a power block and we were trying to pull someone in, it would be fine for us to invest a little bit of money, but for us, that's a lot of bit of money, and so we can't get anything going with France right now, but we don't have good relations with France, and so let's get on that and start improving them. So we have a little bit of a moment of truth. We are establishing our company, and it's going to be the first company that we have established. Hopefully we can get some overseas ones. We do see precision tools as something that we can potentially get going, but tools is probably the most ubiquitous good in that in terms of the total buy orders of all goods within a normal looking economy, tools probably has the highest proportion. So we are going to go for that. It looks like we are trending upwards in some prosperity, and these should get a lot better once they have the throughput from the Panama Metalworks. I don't know if they're going to employ up a ton. It looks like maybe they will. We really just don't have any population. But the thing is, the question for us is, if this downsizes by 1, does this brick the company? And if it does, we're going to have to make some uncomfortable moves in order to make companies work for us, like subsidizing all of the tooling workshops, which is we can eat a very substantive subsidy in the port, but I'm not sure we can eat subsidizing 5 levels of tools. But if we were to do this, we would collapse the price of tools and we would see a bunch of tools get traded. But we really don't have the trade capacity to both import iron and all this other nonsense, and also export tools. And so this is something that, wow, the Trade Work Center is doing great, though. Truly, we are becoming a trade empire, and this is both a gift and a curse. It's a little bit of a curse because we can't employ up on the tooling workshops. Oop, we're not going to do that. But this is kind of what we were going for, is that we were mainly just going to have just financial districts and trade centers, and it looks like this is kind of the effect we're getting, and on a per-pop basis, this does look to be pretty effective here. We do see that it is only employing 3k pops for 3 levels, though. It's just 1k per level, and I think that we do need another one of these ports, so we'll kick one into the front of the queue, and it will add to the discomfort for us. But the margin also is really improving on the trade center because we're subsidizing the port, so maybe that's also part of what's going on here. In terms of the expenses here, we were paying like double or triple the amount on merchant marine, and yeah, that would have eaten our entire balance. So the fact that we're subsidizing these ports to get the infrastructure, really making the trade pop off here as well. So we have a ton of agreements wherein we are getting investment rights in other people's country. This will allow us to get regional investment centers. if we allow investment rights on this company. We're going to do this, and this unlocks our ability to spend their investment pool, which often they don't build construction sectors if they're that small, and so their investment pool should just be building up, and so hopefully this just turbo unlocks a whole bunch of money for our Panama Metalworks to be able to buy a bunch of buildings. Now, it'll take some time for them to actually establish stuff overseas, to establish regional HQs in places like Zululand, but we're hoping that they pick up relatively quickly, and that we get access to a ton of free money. If we swap to Zululand, we would see that because they don't have any construction sectors, their investment pool is just all the way saved up. You need at least one construction sector in order to unlock your investment pool, and so this strategy of just unlocking investment pool on these very, very small guys, I think is probably reasonably powerful just in general, but it's going to be very, very powerful for us with this run where we are gimping ourselves in a lot of ways, and so hopefully this unlocks for us a whole bunch of potential that we will then be able to invest in all over the place in all of these areas. We also grant the company trade rights, and they pretty quickly pick up a trade center that they are going to be owning in Benin, and so now this company can start making money, and hopefully they can make a regional location in Benin, but them buying and building and using these trade centers is going to be fantastic for us because, okay, they're importing some of this stuff, but what we want is we want them to start exporting some of this stuff, you know what I mean? Of course, they're not... The AI doesn't like to necessarily use all of its PMs, and so they're probably going to not switch up to atmospheric engine unless we give them a reason to. Maybe building coal will incentivize them to do this. Also, we probably want to start building some low construction cost things, because the logic for the AI in terms of the auto queue reconsiders something every time something is completed. I believe this is the way this works. So our company is going to consider buying something only when objects in the queue get completed, if I'm not mistaken on how this works. I'm not 100% sure on that. It's been a little bit, but our experimentation with our zero construction run with Austria seemed to indicate this. We can see that they pick up a trade center in Panama. Good for them. And so they will start actually making some money instead of just being listless and, well, I mean, they're still listless, but, you know, we don't have any pops. Alright, so Belgium is currently experiencing a revolution, which I think makes them more likely to accept some of our agreements because GDP size of them is going to be much, much smaller considering what part of them is rebelling. So we're going to offer them 1K a week in exchange for investment rights, and this should get very, very profitable because looky at what part is of rebelling of them. And so hopefully they accept that. Alright, well, you know, it do be what it is. So we have another deal here. Because the Ottomans produce so much tobacco and they are engaging with trade on it on the world stage, they would be really happy if we prohibited the trade of tobacco. We don't really want to either import or export tobacco. We would rather our trades go to other stuff, even if tobacco is the most profitable. Currently, we're importing a little bit from the USA. And so I think what we're going to do is we are going to offer to host their power block embassy. We are going to prohibit trade of tobacco and look to pick up investment rights in the Ottoman Empire, which is absolutely massive relative to us, and so we are now going to be able to invest in their nation, which is going to give us a lot of opportunities for our private investors, and we can also look to specifically push what we want in terms of forcing them to trade more stuff by building in their locations, or sorry, in their states where we want to push trade. We can build trade centers. So I don't have a very strong understanding of how good this is, but we're going to give colonization rights to the Panama Metalworks, mainly because we really can't colonize anything with 280k, and it also violates the spirit of the run, where we're just operating out of Panama, and we're going to take the Suez Canal, but that might be it. So we're going to give them colonization rights in here, and that will make them a separate tag, a separate country, if you will. That will be a subject of ours. And we can see them right here, Panamanian South Cameroon. Or does this have to finish? It looks like this might have to finish, in which case we will be waiting quite a long time, and we will get to eventually see the outcome of the Panama Metalworks eventually becoming their own nation. We could also maybe vassal feed them a little bit, but I think I like the idea that we establish maybe something going on in Africa here, but nothing too substantive, nothing too crazy, and maybe this going for this is a bit of a mistake, but we'll discover all that together. Now, so with such a small population, it's really going to make a big difference when we can move on to secular administration and this type of thing, because we don't have an absolutely enormous amount. In fact, we have no peasants, so we don't have a really large amount from all these manor houses and stuff like this that is going to really drive the clout of the Catholic Church. So I imagine the swap off of these will actually really eat into the clout quite a bit if we take a Monday. Does it really not? Oh, very interesting. Well, we also do have, we doubled our population when we picked up this this here. Of course, the people here are starving. I guess we should try and do something about that. We moved our interest away from here because we're not really looking to get this in that much. Interesting that they have a furniture manufactory owned out of this area here. We will come back to colonizing this at some point, but we really are trying to keep our interest in Belgium because majority of like our expense and like what is going on just has to do with the iron and the fact that this is really pushing trade advantage on the iron in a substantive way because they are the biggest exporter of this thing, is making it so that we really kind of are interested in doing that. You can see that we have a trade advantage now, 127% in imports, so we are getting quite a better price here, allowing our trade center to be more profitable. And you can see that the world's largest exporter, it's actually switched to being Prussia. It's switched to being Prussia. Well, Prussia has an interest up here, so the fact that part of our thing is coming from the fact that we have overriding interests with Prussia, but very interesting that Prussia has overtaken them. You can see that we have interests, lack of interest in the market. Prussia's not included in the malice here, and I do think we have, we saw that we have like 87% from trade privileges. So the trade privileges we got from Prussia is interestingly enough helping them out because it's allowing them to export a lot better at a much better price because we are one of the biggest importers of iron, and so this is going to allow their iron industries to be more profitable. So that's going to be good for them and good for us. We're still also getting money off of them, which is allowing us to add a little bit more construction. And interestingly, as we add construction, we decrease our GDP. As we add trade centers, we decrease our GDP because this is pulling pops off of this stuff. We're pulling pops off the other stuff, and you can see here there's no output good on the trade center. So as we do this, we are pulling our GDP back down towards 200k, where it's basically 100% stalled out. And at this 200k, we are getting a reinvestment multiplier of very nearly 3, which we're very okay with. And it might be like, well, generalists, we're making no progress. What is this about? With this terrible? Incidentally, we do have a lack of market access, so we will add one of these. Well. We own overseas over 800% of the amount of GDP that we have at home, which is now in excess in terms of looking at it from a total value perspective. We have effectively over 2 million GDP owned, even though we're at 200k. So we're starting to actually pick up quite a bit of speed. Our company is starting to do all right. We are approaching the point where we will actually unlock our prestige good, which is something that is nice. They have assets in several different areas, although we don't see, we haven't seen that acquire a regional company charter, but I think that they have to have 5 levels in someone else's nation for this to happen. But we have 4 levels of trade centers in Tunisia, so maybe we're approaching this point where we gain access to a regional thing in Tunisia, unlocking our ability to waste their investment pool with our stuff. In fact, we'll expand the trade center there for that in hopes that we can get that thing, because Tunisia has a construction sector, so they are actually getting to utilize their investment pool. But Gaza, for example, a point of emphasis is their construction, or they're building a construction sector. No, terrible. But they would not, under normal circumstances, be able to utilize their investment pool. Like, they can't utilize their investment pool here in Zululand, so if we get our investment center there, we will just be able to completely drain their investment pool for ourselves. Okay, so for some reason, right now, France actually thinks we're spending money on military. They're like, wow, you're spending so much on military, that's crazy. We would love for you to enter our embassy, and we would love to pay you a bunch of money. We'll take the not 100% chance. We could owe them an obligation and get the 100% chance in here, and maybe look to add some other stuff. Maybe let's actually do that. We'll take a closer look. All right, we're going to take a 65% chance roll for giving them an embassy, and in return, they give us 2K a week and give us investment rights, but we are going to have to give them an obligation. I don't think they'll be able to pull us into their power block because we've given out so many power block embassies, and the power block embassies are also improving our relations with everyone else. So we're going to send this in, and hopefully we get an agreement, and we do, and so now we have investment rights in France as well. Ugh. That's a little bit gross. That is disgusting. I think I'm going to need to take a shower after I'm done recording this, but we will start acquiring in France ownership levels in this area. We also have, a little bit in Egypt because they are still a subject of the Ottomans. So we are starting to get quite a bit of ownership, and I think that France will give us good opportunities. I think that they'll have relatively profitable industries compared to, something like Zululand, and so when our country invests in them, I think that'll be a little bit better for us when they do stuff like picking up the tooling workshops. I was expecting to see one of those there. I don't know where France's tooling workshops are, but they're somewhere, and we're going to have opportunities to purchase them. So we have acquired our first regional HQ in the Ottoman Empire, and it is doing quite well. Over the course of a very short period, it has established an additional 3 levels of buildings. I'm assuming using quite a bit of investment from the Ottoman Empire's investment pool, which is going to be very nice. Also, we're picking up a bunch of really, really profitable buildings here from France, and if any one of these gets to level 5, or they get to level 5 in any particular location, we will establish a regional company in France as well. So at this point, I think we're kind of making a little bit of a turn where we're caring less about getting money from diplopacts from various countries, because this is starting to represent a smaller and smaller portion of our income, and starting to care more about getting investment rights so that we can steal their investment capacity. If we take a look at what's going on here, we are getting 25k income into our investment pool. It is getting multiplied by 3x in order to get up to that. I believe this is not the final number. I don't think it's get plus 75k. I believe it's plus 25k in terms of how it is represented in the UI, but it is getting multiplied up to that, and we are earning like 1.4k from like taxes, and then 6k from diplopacts, but this is no longer representing basically just like the entirety of our income. We're having wild swings. We're not really losing 20k, and when buildings are bought from our government, this will just like slam back up into the positive very, very aggressively, and so that's kind of what's going on in terms of our investment. And just taking a look at our GDP, oh no, it's 127k. We have over 2,000% of our home GDP invested abroad, so doing okay. So we have an opportunity for an absolutely huge role on a treaty with the USA. We are giving up Power Block Embassy trade privileges. We are taking from them trade privileges and investment rights, and also money transfer. The money transfer is not the significant part, and in fact, we could maybe just like make this a little bit smaller, get ourselves a little bit more of a higher role. Actually, let's just get rid of this entirely. I think that we would really like this treaty to go through. We have a 70% chance, investment rights, trade privileges, both directions, and we give them a power block embassy. This seems fine for us, and so we will put that in, and then they enter into the agreement, which is going to be very nice for us, because now our companies are going to be picking stuff up. We have eyes on doing another company. We are currently researching our second company. I think we're going to go for the mineral producers. We can't go for the iron mines because we don't have any iron mines, so we can't build a level 5 iron mine, so that's impossible, but we do have coal in Panama, so we are going to be able to do that. And the Panama Metalworks will start picking up buildings in the USA for, its own usages. So that might take a little while. It's whenever we finish constructing a building that it really goes in. So that'll be a thing. And I think that what we'll do is once we start seeing someplace acquire a couple levels in France, we might look to specifically push it more. We see that this is ownership that our metalworks should be able to buy from France, so we'll leave this alone. But the idea is we do want a level 5 building somewhere so that we can get a regional HQ in France in addition to the one that we have in the Ottoman Empire, allowing us to utilize their investment pool. Things are looking a little bit sketchy. We might have to pump the brakes in terms of decreasing construction. In fact, let's do that now, but and then we should be A-okay. I think that in theory we should be A-okay, but it really depends on where they're buying buildings, if they're buying buildings, this type of thing. But the swings are absolutely massive. We could also use the exploit to clear the debt, except for that exploit requires you actually have a big GDP. We don't have a big GDP, so that wouldn't even work. So as we're starting to push a large volume of trade, these guys are starting to really like trade privileges in both directions, because this does make them more money in the short term. And we're going to look to keep on picking up investment rights with other countries. We also hit the other convention of the colon. We have 2 of the colons here, and I know it's probably pronounced Cologne, but like we have the Treaty of the Colon, and we have the Convention of the Colon, which of course it's a party in the colon. But we also in Panama Metalworks have gotten a regional company here in Burgundy. You can see it's already starting to use the investment pool of France against them to purchase more and more of these, and this is money that is going to be going to our investment pool. Our investment pool is going up by 30k, or it's going to be, actually the money here might go to the regional company HQ. I think that it goes towards... Let's take a quick look at Burgundy and maybe try and suss out exactly the my understanding is it's going to our investment pool, but we do have tooling workshop in Picardy that is going to be owned. And where exactly, where do you go here? I guess it just stops here, but it's owned by our company. So this goes to workforce dividends that is getting paid out to, or some of this is going to reinvestment, right? And so I think the reinvestment does go to ours. We might be able to see this in terms of tooling workshop to Picardy, but it is a little bit opaque in terms of trying to figure out, okay, so the regional company HQ, it just is its own contribution. And so this is just adding to our investment pool, allowing us to build up more. We are running a little bit of a negative balance. I think we'll maybe start taxing people a little bit, or maybe we can run a consumption tax, something like this. No, we'll start taxing people. Well, no, we won't. We'll keep the taxes low. We want the SOL to be somewhat high, although this is way above 10. I don't think our growth rate is maxed at 10 right now. I think it's maxed out at 20. So we'll keep everything low. That way we could try and grow the pop as much as possible, because that is 100% our throttle here. And eventually we won't have any sort of industries that have a few guys kind of employed with which to siphon out to get our trade center working, which is just disgustingly efficient per pop. We maybe even want to subsidize this, but you can see here all the trades here, it's all imports. And the reason why it's all imports is because, ooh, we're exporting just a little bit of that. That's fine. The reason why it's all imports is because we have a massive ownership class here that needs all these consumer goods, and we produce nothing. That is what we produce. 80k. Just because I think that this will be funny to watch, we are at 4,500% of our GDP ownership is in fact overseas rather than in Panama. So if we take a look at the census data and we sort by population and we exclude the colony, we get a really good sense for exactly what's going on. And if you look at what all the buildings the most populous members of our nation are in, they're basically all in either infrastructure, trade centers, or ownership buildings. The only exception on this entire list is the coffee plantation that is being operated, which is very, very substantive. Now recall at the start of this episode, we had 1.4k upper class pops. Now we have 14k upper class pops, and we have about 170k pops in Panama proper, which I think is what we should focus on, Panama proper here, because that's where all our ownership is anyways. So we've gone from having 1% of our pops being ownership or upper strata to very close to 10% being upper strata. So we are really getting hyper polarized or not hyperpolarized. Technically, it's less polarized. But the point is, we are shifting way more towards being upper strata, and that is where everything is going, and that's where everything is going to head to. In terms of institutions, we haven't really talked about this too much, but as a general heuristic, the more upper class pops you have, or the higher density of upper class pops, and or the less peasants you have, the better institutions get. You don't want to put them in very early as China, because you just have a bunch of peasants. They generally scale with the efficacy of your population, and so we're just maxing out institutions. That's what we're going to be doing, and the minus mortality is going to be nice for helping us to try and grow our population, which is very, very, very low. We can't get mass migrations very easily because of the malice, and we do have negative migration attraction because despite, you know, our owning of 35 million GDP, we are still an insignificant power, and I think our prestige is like 5. Yeah, we have 6 prestige here, which, you know, it's 6 because we have percentage bonuses. We just have the 5 based here, and that is the only thing that is giving us prestige. But I think we're going to conclude this episode here. Next episode, we might look to turn and burn on the Navy, which would be the source of prestige, allow us to put in more than one diplomatic interest, which we're just been shuffling around in order to try and get things done. This would be quite nice. And we also have a treat. Truly a treat. We are going to try and push for slavery next episode as well, because we have been keeping an eye on the agitators looking for a slaver. We're currently on legacy slavery, but this guy endorses slave trade, and we can use this guy pretty comfortably to try and pass a law, and so that's probably what we'll be doing this next episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You know, do the YouTube algorithm thing. But other than that, have a good one.